In the memories of millions, Clark Gable is the king of Hollywood, an icon of eternal charm and a dazzling smile. From the dashing Rhett Butler to other classic roles, Gable seemed to have it all: talent, fame, and the adoration of his audience. Yet, behind that dazzling spotlight was a very different Clark Gable. A man who carried deep emotional wounds, pains that never truly healed. For those who lived through World War II or cherished the King of Cinema, his story will likely evoke more empathy than ever before. Today we'll peel back the curtain on untold facets, the private sorrows he kept hidden throughout his life. Have you ever wondered what shape the quiet, contemplative man Clark Gable became in his later years? Join us as we explore the tragic inner journey of a legend to better understand the invisible scars that forever etched themselves onto the King of Hollywood's heart. The Fateful Love and Its Demise. Clark Gable's heart, which had already been through many storms in his life and career, was broken forever on January 16, 1942. It was not only the day Hollywood lost a shining star, but also the day the King of Hollywood lost half of his soul, Carole Lombard. A tragic plane crash took the life of his beloved wife, along with her mother and 20 others, while she was returning from a war bond sale. For Gable, it was not a mere news event. It was an event that tore his life into two parts, before and after Carole. The love story between Clark Gable and Carole Lombard is a legendary Hollywood love story, a flame that burned so intensely and so genuinely that it was rarely seen in the glamorous world of stars. Gable, with his rugged, experienced appearance, scarred by 2 previous failed marriages, found in Lombard a kindred spirit, a woman full of energy, humor, and candor. She was not the pretentious star type with the standard rules. Carole was a breath of fresh air, a confidant, someone who brought light and laughter to his often lonely life. While Hollywood called him the king, Carole treated him like a normal man, occasionally teasing him lovingly. It was this honesty and lack of pretense that completely won Gable over. They were 2 perfect pieces complementing each other wonderfully. Clark, who usually kept a cold, expressionless face and carried the thoughtfulness of a seasoned man, became surprisingly soft and gentle when he was with Carole. She was the only person he truly trusted, the only person who could make him take off his king mask, to be true to himself, to have fun, to even do silly things. Carole gave him a real sense of home, a peaceful place that he longed for after many years of wandering in the glamorous but empty world of Hollywood. She was a solid support, a daily joy, a person who understood him better than anyone else. Their marriage was not only a love affair, but also a rare spiritual harmony, a destiny that connected 2 seemingly opposite people. Carole Lombard was the lighthouse that illuminated Clark Gable's life. The fateful crash and a horrified reaction. When the devastating news of the horrific plane crash in Potosi Mountain, Nevada, hit Clark Gable's world, silently collapsed. He was on set filming Somewhere I'll Find You with Lana Turner at the time. Shock, utter horror consumed his entire being. No words could describe the despair he was experiencing. It's said that he immediately rushed to the crash site, braving the danger and the biting cold of the winter desert. Gable searched himself desperately, hoping for a miracle. He stood there helplessly watching the charred plane wreckage, the bodies being recovered, and his last hopes vanishing with the cold wind. The image of a broken Clark Gable, his eyes vacant, stripped of any trace of the King of Hollywood's glamour, became a haunting sight for those who witnessed it. That was the moment he realized the woman of his life, the one who gave meaning to everything, was gone. Gable's reaction after finding Carole's body was not one of screams or violent emotional outbursts. On the contrary, he fell into a terrifying silence. That silence was more frightening than any cry, for it indicated a pain that had surpassed the limits of endurance, causing his emotions to freeze completely. He didn't shed a single public tear during the funeral. This event not only took his wife but also stole a piece of Gable himself, leaving a permanent, unfillable void. That pain wasn't a storm that passed and dissipated, but a deep cut into his soul, silently bleeding continuously. Hollywood buzzed with talk of Carol's passing, but no one could truly touch the secret sorrow that Clark Gable was gnawing at alone. That was the moment his life took a dark turn forever, carrying the burden of loss. Eternal emptiness and a heartbreaking secret. Carole Lombard's death was a spiritual scar that never healed for Clark Gable. He was physically and mentally changed by this tremendous anguish. He collapsed into serious despair after the funeral. He refused to see or converse to anyone. Their Encino home, once full of laughter and joy, became a silent memorial to lost love. Gable sometimes shut himself in his room, drowned himself in booze, a habit he had but worsened, and had nightmares about the accident, and Carol leaving. Despite it being a disaster beyond anyone's control, his friends said he continuously blamed himself for not protecting her. His broken psyche was further burdened by this senseless guilt. Clark Gable's hesitation to touch Carol's items after her death showed his enduring anguish and a terrible secret few understood. Her bedroom was uncluttered, as if she had left and would return. Her clothes, jewels, and little trinkets stayed. He even ordered his housekeeper not to touch Carol's vanity flowers until they wilted to prolong her final appearance and deny that she was gone forever. This act showed unconditional love and a man's terrible internal struggle to embrace the truth and let go of the past. He performed it privately, a painful method to keep Carol with him, to cling to a lost love. Clark Gable was forever changed by Carol's death. He became increasingly somber, quiet, and aloof as it ate into his spirit. He often looked melancholy, as if looking for Carol far away. Even his few laughs grew forced and sporadic. He tried to work in films again, but his excitement and delight in acting seemed gone. All his latter parts had a tinge of austerity and loneliness, not a short-term ache. Clark Gable lived with the scar until his death. His following relationships may have brought companionship or temporary joy, but they never replaced Carol. His spark and spiritual connection with her never returned. After January 16, 1942, Clark Gable's life was eternally marked by loss, longing, and a terrible, fated love. Carol's grief was not merely that of a husband who lost his wife, but of a soul that lost its anchor light and joy. His secret anguish haunted him forever, the haunting specter of death. After Carole Lombard's death, Clark Gable's life plunged into a deep abyss of despair. Hollywood was stunned when their king, a 41-year-old man, world-famous, and perfectly able to avoid military service, decided to enlist. This was no impulsive act or PR stunt. The decision stemmed from a profound longing, an irresistible urge he wanted to escape the pain, escape his now empty home, and, perhaps, escape himself. Many believe that Carole Lombard planted this idea in Gable. She was a fervent patriot, and her death, while on a war bond tour, had become a symbol. Gable felt he had to do something, not just to honor Carol, but to seek a new purpose for his shattered life. Enlisting facing danger was perhaps the only way he could punish himself for the irrational guilt of not being able to protect his beloved wife. It was an act of atonement, a personal sacrifice not only for his country, but for a broken heart. Clark Gable, abandoning his luxurious life and the glamour of the stage, became a private in the U.S. Army Air Forces in August 1942. This event caused a major sensation. Imagine the King of Hollywood, a global icon, volunteering to put his life on the line. He didn't seek privilege or a safe role. Instead, he attended officer training school, and then, defying all objections from superiors who wanted to keep him in a safe propaganda role, he insisted on participating in actual combat missions. This was a private secret about a desire to experience pain and hardship as a way to numb the emotional torment that gnawed at him every day. Clark Gable was trained as a gunner and aerial cinematographer on B-17 flying Fortress bombers. His assignment was to film a propaganda recruitment movie, but this was merely a cover for a harsher truth. Gable actively participated in combat missions. He flew with shotgun crews on a bomber named the Avenger from its base in England. Within a few months in 1943, Gable completed 5 bombing missions over occupied German territory. Each flight was a direct confrontation with death. He faced intense German anti-aircraft fire, the whistling of machine gun fire from enemy fighters in his ears, and the sight of other B-17s being shot down, bursting into flames, and exploding in the sky. He witnessed comrades fall, their lifeless bodies plummeting thousands of feet. In one bombing mission over Antwerp, a bullet pierced his shoe and jacket, narrowly missing his head by mere inches. On another occasion, his machine gun jammed as enemy planes bore down on them. Gable experienced moments where death was close, where the line between life and death became more tenuous than ever. The sights, sounds, and smells of the battlefield etched themselves deeply into Gable's mind. The roar of engines, the deafening explosions of bombs, the screams of pilots and soldiers, the smell of gunpowder and blood all became a part of him. Although he always maintained a tough exterior internally, these experiences planted the seeds of unending hauntings. Each bullet, each explosion, each fallen comrade's face was a cruel reminder of the fragility of life, of sudden death, something he had experienced most brutally with Carol's loss. War was not just a mission, it was a repetition of the pain of loss, now multiplied hundreds, even thousands of times over. The silent suffering of a returning soldier. Clark Gable returned to Hollywood in 1944 a changed man. His Air Medal and Distinguished Flying Cross did not cure his inner wounds after he was dismissed as a major. Even though PTSD was not commonly diagnosed at the time, he returned with significant psychological anguish. He found normal life strange. Hollywood noise, social parties, and frivolous scripts were meaningless. Gable grew distant and irritated. He had nightmares of the war, his comrades and explosions and gunshots. Images of horror plagued his sleep. He kept his experiences to himself and didn't talk about them. Another agonizing secret, a part of him the world could never touch. He had observed too much tragedy and sorrow to describe. He used emotional numbness to defend himself, but it made it hard to connect with others. Carole Lombard was the only one he could share his fears and joys with. Now she was gone. Gable endured his biggest tragedies, losing his wife and war. He was alone, torn between his screen glory and his invisible wounds. His eyes no longer saw his smile. We watched Clark Gable on film, but William Clark Gable struggled with the past. His life after the war showed that even the greatest heroes can suffer silently, day after day, hour after hour, till the end. These wounds didn't bleed, but they hurt more than any physical pain, and changed Clark Gable into a contemplative man with unsaid sorrows few understood. Gable's mind would quickly return to the tiny B-17 cockpit, the whistling machine gun fire, and the smell of death whenever a plane roared overhead or a loud noise echoed. Every night Carol's gorgeous, brilliant image would emerge, then evaporate like smoke, leaving only terrible agony. And the haunting question, why? His life became a circle of anguish where Carol and war memories merged, tearing him apart. He was torn between greatness and lost love, and bombs and death. He was haunted by this burden which he could not express. Life after the war. A smile that didn't reach his eyes. Clark Gable returned to Hollywood, but he was no longer the carefree, dashing King Gable of old. He still made movies, still appeared in public, but his eyes had changed. The smile on his lips might still form, but his gaze was distant, harboring an unnamed sorrow. It was the sadness of a man who had witnessed too much, lost too much, and could no longer find complete meaning in the glamorous life. His later roles, though, still distinctly, Clark Gable lacked the sparkle, the natural charm that had made him famous. One could sense a weariness, a hidden austerity in every scene. He was no longer interested in all-night revelries or extravagant parties. Instead, he sought solitude, keeping company with bottles of liquor and cigarettes, lost in his own thoughts. His home, once a happy haven, now became a refuge from the outside world, from curious stares and meaningless questions. He did try to find love, new relationships after Carol. His later marriages to Sylvia Ashley or Kay Spreckles, though they might have offered him some companionship, could never fill the immense void that Carol left. People saw him try, but it was the effort of someone searching for something lost, an irreplaceable phantom. Each relationship seemed only to highlight Carol's absence, making him more acutely aware of the loneliness and emptiness in his soul. It wasn't a comparison, but a cruel truth. Carol Lombard was unique, and her death had stolen his ability to love completely. He lived a life of material abundance, but emotionally it was impoverished, a tragedy of a solitary man in a crowd. Clark Gable's life is a poignant testament to how even the greatest icons can bear silent pains that gnaw at them from within. His death in 1960 at the age of 59 from a heart attack was perhaps also a consequence of years spent carrying that dual burden. Doctors later speculated that the stress from wartime bombing raids and the grief of losing Carol may have contributed to his weakened health. But the most telling detail, the one that truly tugs at our heartstrings, is Clark Gable's final act. He was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California, next to the only woman he ever truly loved, Carol Lombard. Even in death, he did not want to leave her side. It was a declaration of eternal love, a painful confession that Carol remained everything to him, even as life itself ended. This act needed no words. It was the most eloquent proof of the pain that followed him to his grave. Today, when we look back at Clark Gable, we don't just see the king of Hollywood, the man with the smile that captivated hearts. We see a flesh-and-blood human being with deep scars, unhealable pains. We see a husband heartbroken by the loss of the love of his life, a soldier haunted by war, and a lonely soul seeking a peace he never truly found. His story is a reminder that glamour can hide much, but pain always finds a way to reveal itself. And for those who loved him, or who have experienced similar losses in wartime, this story will forever be a tearful whisper about a legend who lived, loved, and endured far too much. May we hope that when we remember the King of Hollywood, we recall not just a star, but a man who loved passionately, dedicated himself fully, and carried the deepest sorrows of the human condition.